Thank you, Michael, for that incredibly warm welcome and very kind words. I'm honored to be here to speak to you all today. I hear that I'm following in some big footsteps, but it's really comforting to see a lot of friendly faces here. So I'm going to jump in because I have a lot to cover in 30 minutes, and I hate when people go over meeting times, so we're going to stick to ours. Michael did a really good job of kind of explaining our timeline, so I think it's important to understand it as well because it is what allowed us to do a lot of the work that we got to accomplish. As he mentioned, in 2015, I started my consulting company. In 2017, I started our nonprofit. I really saw this need for meals after school, and there is a federally funded program called the Child and Adult Feeding Program that a lot of schools don't always take advantage of, and a lot of small nonprofits don't take advantage of because it takes a lot of work to run a federally funded program. So we kind of pitched it to all of our schools and our clients. We were working with a lot of charter schools here in Baton Rouge and beyond and said, hey, there's this great after-school feeding program. All you have to do is, 20 different steps with LDOE and then set up 18 other systems and have an auditor and and a CPA. So rightfully, schools are like, I don't have time for that. So I said, well, I don't have time for it, but I have the knowledge to do it. So I Googled, how do you start a nonprofit? And filled out my 1023 and submitted it. And 3 months later, we got our 501c3. I was kind of shocked that it was, happened like that. But that is what we do. So we take on the administrative burden for school systems and or other small nonprofits to be the sponsor and receive the funding and pay for the food for after school and summer feeding. So fast forward, for the first 2 years, we had no employees. It was just me, kind of pro bono, doing the work because I just knew it was important. So 2019 was an amazing year because I hired somebody to help me, and it kind of, led us up for 2020 when COVID hit. So we were set up to become a summer meal sponsor right before that summer. So we were kind of in a good position for that. Then 2021, we'll talk a little bit about what we did during Ida, and then what we kind of do now. So I had to go back in my emails because this is quite honestly a blur for me this time period. I'm sure it is for you. I also had a 3-month-old and was living in Denver. But I was still running this nonprofit here, and I think it kind of helped me to be, separated from the weeds. But on March 14th, I'm running this consulting company. We have clients all over the U.S., so I'm seeing dominoes fall in other states that we work in, that schools are closing, people are staying home, so I knew it was coming. I like to be very proactive in general in life. I understand that, organizations like LDOE are usually reactive. So I started calling. I started calling food truck owners. I started calling school districts. I started emailing LDOE saying, what are we going to do? What's the plan? No one had a plan, so I started making a plan. March 16th, LAUSD, which is Los Angeles School District, shut down. And then sure enough, on March 22nd, our governor issued the stay-at-home order, and all schools stopped feeding. Even if they were doing something small, everybody went home. So this was a ripple effect. And when schools stopped feeding, and there's a lot of reasons as to why they did, they're really not equipped to mass feed curbside meals. That's not how their kitchens are built. That's not what their staff know. That's not the type of food they've been serving. So it made sense when it happened. All of that started March 14th. On March 23rd, we launched. We were ready to go. We had, indeed, food trucks, a small kitchen on Highland. I remember the guy I had running it, I had hired, they interviewed him in the morning, and he was like, yeah, we'll have donuts and this. And I was like, no, we don't serve donuts, right? We got to serve healthy food. And he's out there, just nervous and talking about all the donuts we're about to feed kids. We did not feed anybody donuts, but so that happened pretty quickly. And so the flip side of this, right, the silver lining is that we had all of these restaurants that were empty and food service workers that didn't have a job and vendors who had nobody to deliver to. Schools are the biggest purchaser in the U.S., more than restaurants and fast food industries. They are the biggest food industry. I think it's like, $90 billion a year that they spend in food. So they surpass any other, organization. And so places like Southside Produce and Capital City Produce suddenly, right, didn't have anybody to deliver to. So it all kind of lined up and fit. The ways in which we did it, several different ways. In East Baton Rouge, Breck was amazing here. We kind of set up all of these routes, mobile food routes, and tried to really get where people lived. You know, transportation was a big issue. We did 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-day meal boxes for some of our more rural parishes. And a couple of school districts really stepped up. You know, EBR stayed and fed their kids. That is important to note. Jefferson Parish shut down, so we actually stepped in for Jefferson Parish school systems. They didn't really contract with us, but you know, we signed an MOU, right, to serve all their foods. We served alongside EBR here, and then other nonprofits. St. Landry Parish used their buses. They picked up our meals and delivered food along their routes. So it was a big group effort to make this work. And ultimately, I think it worked because we moved so fast. We made very quick decisions. We didn't wait around to get permission. We just started doing. I also have a board who took a step back in the time that you kind of want your board to step back. You normally, you don't want a really involved board, but they just said, Emily, go. We've got your back. We'll support you. The partnerships that we made. You know, prior to this work, I moved. I left this state. I went to Colorado. I really felt like I was working in a silo here. Many reasons, but we came back. Louisiana just sucks you in like that. But I think we came back after seeing what this community is made of. The partnerships that we built during this time really opened my eyes to other things that were going on in this community that I didn't know about. So that was a neat, again, silver lining. But we also had some amazing funders in our community who said, what do you need? How can we help? And then being very direct with our needs. I had people saying, what do you need? And I had to very quickly say, I need $100,000, and this is why. And then lastly, you know, trust. It could have really, right, I could have taken everything and like gone to Bora Bora. We kind of made a couple jokes about that, but I didn't, obviously. So it took a lot of trust on both avenues there of that we could pull this off, that the folks we hired, you know, I contracted a lot of work out, would pull their weight, and it really just all worked together miraculously. So these are some of the folks who helped out, you know, No Kid Hungry, BRAF, Wilson Foundation, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Hancock Whitney. I mean, I was blown away by the support during this time, and never did I feel alone. We also, as Michael mentioned, we leased out Celtic Studios and had, I mean, the setup there was wild. It was like 25 reefers that were frozen and refrigerated with an assembly line in the middle of a production studio with walls of boxes. We also got to work with several restaurants here in town and in New Orleans that were amazing. They opened up their doors, their staff, and came in. So the cool thing about what we were doing, and some of the school districts were like, pump the brakes, because we were making chef meals for these kids to eat. And the feedback they were getting was, this is better than what we have in school. And a food service director that I became friends with was like, can you just chill out with the fancy thing? But that was a fun thing. And then, of course, you know, some of our local produce and milk companies were pretty crucial. So March to August, when schools opened back up, our job was kind of done with that. We employed around 400 people. We received $17 million in federal funds. So this was all done through the Summer Food Service Program, which is federally funded. We raised outside of that, or were granted $500,000, which was crucial for our cash flow. And then to kind of give you a comparison, the prior year, our annual budget was $350,000. Thankfully, again, I kind of run this consulting company where we manage probably $50 million a year in other schools' funds. So we had the systems in place to know what to do with a federally funded program. And we also managed all the audits that come with that. So I knew right in the back of my head, that's how I operate. It's like, well, this is going to be audited, so it needs to be clean. It needs to be good. So that's what we did for COVID. These are just, again, so much time. I had to pick just a few of our favorite photos of some of the kids we got to serve. The top right, Front Yard Bikes was an awesome partner through this. They would get our meals and bike them through the neighborhood, delivering them to doorsteps. We also partnered with like Aetna and a few others who were giving out dental supplies in our food lines. And the Baton Rouge Library gave us things to get out. So it was a really, beautiful moment in a somewhat chaotic time. Okay, so we're going to fast forward to August 2021 and kind of explain how we did disaster preparedness from leaving COVID. So again, we formed all these wonderful partnerships during COVID that really set us up for when Hurricane Ida hit. I have a school food vendor in Chicago, and I called them and I said, all of our power is out. I need boxes of kid-friendly food that's shelf-stable. Can you get it to me? They sent me a 18-wheeler that was packed front to top, it was packed with front to back with boxes of food for kids. And I called up my new friend, Christian Engel, and said, hey, I need a place to put 50,000 boxes. Do you have a space? Christian said, come on in. So we showed up, and there was some fraternity showed up with kids, and all the Y board members showed up. It was, again, a really cool moment where we moved all this food off and were able to, within 72 hours, start feeding the community. This kind of caught the eye of BRAF, right, was really instrumental, in FEMA. So I learned how to work with FEMA and GOSEP, which is a really interesting, thing to contract with our federal government, but why not? So we were employed sort of by FEMA to feed families and those impacted in 8 different parishes. We employed 20 temporary staff. We rented the trucks. We worked with 3 local restaurants. Again, who really came through, right? We no longer had Celtic studios, so we now needed restaurants. So Bistro Byron's, amazing humans, stepped up, and they had just opened their mid-city location. They hadn't yet opened it. Obviously, the hurricane shut it down, but once again, we had chef-prepared meals. It was just really nice and neat to go out, and Robert Group in New Orleans to kind of help us try and feed families all over. But Baton Rouge Area Foundation, Sprouts, the YMCA, Capital Area United Way, who instantly said, Emily, what do you need? Our governor's office, Blue Cross Blue Shield, all of these entities helped us alongside the Baton Rouge Food Bank. We tried to kind of mirror where they were giving out their food, like where could we go to give out hot meals? That's kind of was our mission, to do prepared hot food. So all the work that we did in COVID sort of set us up to just be this expert on mass feeding, never which I thought I would be, and I still don't think I am, but we've definitely learned lessons along the way. So, back to now. I'm kind of going to talk about what I'm seeing right now in the landscape of, remember, our mission is to make every child have access to healthy food. Our focus is kids. Inadvertently, and we're happy to support kids and their families, but our main mission is working with kids. So I have to mention food insecurity in Louisiana. 1 in 5 children experience hunger. We are the top 5 states, in the top 5 states that's consistently has high child hunger rates. We're also the same in the top for childhood obesity. Those go hand in hand, and I'll kind of explain that in a bit. But some of these stats are interesting to me in that Louisiana has dropped off in participation in some of these federally funded programs. From October 2019 to 2022, we dropped 40% in average daily participation of how many suppers we're providing. So for every 100 eligible students, we're only serving 4 a supper. So 100 of them have access to this federally funded supper meal program after school, but we as a state are only serving 4. That is hugely below the national average, which FRAC, so the Food and Research Advocacy Institute, I think they want you closer to like 40. Also for summer, between 2015 and 2019, again, across the state, our summer meal participation dropped by 30%. The need has not dropped. The need has risen. So millions of federal dollars are being left on the table. So here's what I see as problems right now, not necessarily in Louisiana, but all over. Lack of access to healthy food. Our kids aren't eating the meals that are in school. There's minimal funding to support our cafeteria programs, and there is, what I can see, not a big focus on fresh, local food systems. And the bureaucratic systems here are wild. I'm going to explain each of those, but I think it's kind of important if we go back to school food. I think our focus should be schools, right? Kids are there every day, and that's where we can reach them. We can feed them good food, and that's where they're getting their breakfast and lunch. When COVID happened and schools shut down and parents suddenly had to feed these kids a breakfast and a lunch every week when before they were getting it from school, think about that if you're on a fixed income. That is a huge sudden increase to your budget. So back to school foods, I don't want to hate on school districts and school food systems. This is what they have to work with. This coming year, they are getting $2.73 for every breakfast that they serve and $4.35 for lunch. With that money, they have to pay for food. So food typically is about 45% of your budget, which if we take that of your reimbursement, they have about $1.95 to spend on the food only. It's really hard to do a healthy meal for $1.95. You probably cannot go into the grocery store today and do that healthy, right? You can maybe buy a Lunchable. Even those, I think, are like $5. And they're not healthy by any means. So they have to pay for their food, their labor, their equipment, the repair, the maintenance, all their smallwares, all their utensils, all their plates and forks. If they have leftover, that's dollars in the trash. They have to satellite food, training all their staff, software. So you can kind of understand why schools might struggle with providing some big, beautiful meal with this federal reimbursement rate. That's hard to go up against. We can't exactly march, on Congress's door, which folks out there are doing it and saying this needs to be higher. But let's talk about this again. So lack of access to healthy food. You have school systems who, during COVID, went 10 steps backwards. They took away the salad bars. They took away, all the fresh scoop on your plate and germs, and breathing and 6 feet. And everything was prepackaged. So everything came portioned and prepackaged. So schools were buying frozen processed things that were easy to just set out for a kid to grab. Plastic alone, it hurts my heart to think about how much schools were contributing to waste. But we haven't gotten much progress since then. I think schools got a little lazy on the easy grab and go and not cooking food, which leads to why kids aren't eating at school. EBR, they're easy to pick on, they're in our backyard, but I'm sure this could be said for multiple school districts in Louisiana across. But EBR is only feeding 15,000 kids a day. They serve 40,000 kids in school. What are these kids doing? They're not eating lunch. They're going home and eating crap. Our childhood obesity problem. So it really goes hand in hand. They don't have access to healthy food. The food that's in front of them, they don't want because it's to them not appealing. And then funding. So what can schools do? There is not a lot of funding for school cafeterias. Most school districts expect the meal program to be self-sufficient. You get your federal dollars, that should run your budget. We don't want to give you extra general fund dollars. That's what I see, across all over. They don't think, maybe we'll invest a little bit more. There's funding out there, and I took away a couple slides because I didn't want to be all doom and gloom, but we're not going after it. There's so many federal funds. There was a huge Healthy Action for Kids just did a $150,000 grant for improving your school meal program. They released the grantees yesterday. They had $30 million to give away. Anyone could apply. You had to be a school district. You had to be rural or small, less than 5,000 students. How many districts here in Louisiana could benefit from $150,000 to help get new equipment, staff training? Guess how many school systems in Louisiana got it? None. I won't even give you time to guess. None. they get the map, and it's this cute little map with stars of everything, and I had it circled. Anyway, we are not going after funds, and it's frustrating. There's also no focus on local fresh food systems. So again, I work all over the country. New York State provides 25 cents a meal if you spend at least 30% of your food budget on local food. Several other states give an extra 10 cents, 15 cents a meal if you're buying local. Louisiana's not. So that is something as a state we could change and incentivize school systems to buy more local foods. We're working with EBR right now on the Good Food Purchasing Policy. It's a really cool policy. It started in LA with LAUSD. It's rolling out across the country. And for the first time, Louisiana is a little bit ahead of this curve. There's only like 10 states, all fairly progressive, that are cities that are doing it. And EBR is hopefully going to adopt this at the next school board meeting, wherever Adonica is. We got to push that through. So we can get there, right? It's possible. To hand clap for EBR, they just hired 2 new chefs. They've never had a chef work for them ever. And they're feeding our kids every day. So who's building those menus? Why aren't more chefs in schools? We need our kids to eat this food. So they are making a lot of steps in the right direction. They've hired 2 chefs. Louisiana did just pass House Bill 282, which is going to allow for every kid who qualifies for reduced meals will now get to eat for free. The state's footing the bill. So that is good progress. However, it's not really tackling the issue, I think, is the quality of the food we're serving. So if we're still just pushing the same food, well, guess what? Those reduced kids are still not going to eat it. This is small. All right. So what would I like to see done in this space? I think we could have a much larger in-state push for promoting these programs we talked about in the beginning, supper and summer. We could be doing, and I say this because I see it being done by other state agencies and entities, and it doesn't have to be the state, it can be a nonprofit or community partners, but regional training, case studies, empower the folks that are doing it and celebrate them, because it's hard. You often feel like you're in a silo. The audits I get from being a summer meal sponsor, I basically tell everybody, you can't talk to me for the next 2 weeks, I have an audit. And it's scary, right? The moment you have a box unchecked, you're getting a finger pointed. So I think the state could do better with promoting these programs, talking about the good, providing best practices. Here's all the tools and templates you need to serve kids, right? Like, let's remember why we're doing this. We could have annual convenings, awards, highlights. Again, lift up the good, inspire others to step up and serve these kids. I think we should be engaging more with superintendents, school boards. When's the last time a superintendent stepped into their cafeteria? I think that there's a lot going on they don't realize, but I think we need to remind superintendents that kids can't bring your test scores up when they're hungry. It doesn't work. And we know kids aren't eating in school. So maybe it should be a priority, and it should be, at the top of every BESI board meeting about school nutrition and what can we as Louisiana do to make real change. Increased funding, right? Maybe there's more state dollars. I don't really know. That's not my department. But maybe we can push and have a lobbyist come in and incentivize for buying local. This last one is kind of my dream. How can we make our districts go out and apply for grants? I see so much cool things happening in Denver public schools and Boulder public schools, from Colorado's, but they're getting big $500,000 grants to make systems change over 3 years. It's out there, so we don't have to depend on the state or the feds. And then lastly, and probably most importantly, it shouldn't be solely on our school systems to feed our kids good food. I think we as a community and other community partners can lean in and say, what do you need? How can we help? Local school districts, our parks and rec, food banks, farmers. How can we all collectively change the way we're feeding kids and how we're accessing kids? So what are we doing currently? We are serving after-school meals in East Baton Rouge. We've partnered with the YMCA. We had a wonderful grant from Capital Area United Way and put in $50,000 in equipment to feed kids better quality food at all of their after-school programs. We are working and sort of shifting our nonprofit into a little bit more of policy and advocacy. You know, the past couple years, I've seen the problems, and instead of just hacking away at small solutions, I think we really need to change some of the things we're seeing. So we've partnered with the American Heart Association on a grant to change policy in EBR. Ideally, that can be piloted and go into other school districts in our state with putting a good food purchasing policy in, which changes the way EBR will purchase food, put in a values-based system. We're, again, back on this advocacy lane. Blue Cross Blue Shield is supporting us with trying to make some of these changes happen. We're actively participating in meetings with the governor's office and LDOE, and we're always exploring, additional partnerships as to how to get some of those things done. We're exploring a commercial kitchen possibility here. I could talk for an hour about that, so I won't. And then working with LDH, because lo and behold, there are some very unique permitting restrictions that no other state in the United States has than us on feeding kids, and the restrictions that are there. Truly, we are the only state that makes it hard to feed kids. So I'm wrapping up, and I'm on time. Our vision for 2023 and beyond. So I can't feed every kid in Louisiana. I tried, and I just can't do it. So I think we need to empower and encourage more school districts and communities to launch or expand the programs that they're doing and feed their kids after school and during summer. I would love to promote and increase this local food purchasing across other districts in Louisiana and even cities and beyond. It doesn't have to be a school district thing. We will continue to feed kids and communities in time of need. We're ready to jump in, if we are called upon. We now kind of have a system, dare I say. We want to support a community kitchen in Baton Rouge. There is no current community kitchen that is geared at feeding kids, but I believe that it could really benefit this community and also serve a purpose during times of disaster, and continue to be a leading advocate for healthier meals in school, better access to healthy food, and overall decreasing child hunger in Louisiana. That's it. Thank you. There's 2 minutes for questions.
Focusing on your last slide about a community kitchen.
Yes.
Is there something that we could model, like we want to do it like this, but adopt it for Louisiana, that we could have a vision?
Yes. Yes, there's multiple food banks in other states. I know that our local food bank has made field trips to them, but there's like Louisville has one, I think Tampa Bay has one, a true community kitchen. So absolutely, we do not want to recreate the wheel. Yes, Susan?
So can you talk a little bit about the trend in a lot of these schools not having kitchens anymore and doing the outside? Is this an issue, and what are we doing to remedy it?
So in Louisiana, we have a law that does not allow school districts to outsource their food service. I believe we're also the only state that has that law. The loophole is charter schools. So a lot of charter schools here don't put food at the forefront, and they open a school without a kitchen. They have what they call a warming kitchen, and that's a problem in our state because according to LDH, to feed somebody without a kitchen, you have to have a food manufacturing permit. And that's the problem, is that that's like what Tabasco has or Nabisco has. Like no caterer has that permit. It's a food, they're not manufacturing food. So we have a lot of schools that are bringing in frozen meals and heating them in ovens right here in Baton Rouge, a lot of our charter schools. I will shout out to Idea Public School. They cook on their own. They built kitchens. It's beautiful. But we do have a lot of schools, not just in Baton Rouge, that built a school without a kitchen or adopted a facility without a kitchen. So that's a problem.
Thank you so much.